Well, happy February, parents. I just want to bring you this month's video and start off with some upcoming events. March 15th and 16th is our Collide Retreat in Branson. Looking forward to a great weekend. We're taking 17 students. We're going to have about 90 students total attending this year with about 8 churches. Our first van will be leaving at 11 o'clock with myself, and we'll head out of here to get down there to get set up early. If your student can go with us, then I need to know by March the 3rd. I know that Rockwood School District is out that day, so if your student can go early with us, that'll really help us out. We're taking 17 students and just a few adults down there with us, and so that's 11 o'clock for the first van, and the second van will leave at 1:30 here from the church so we can get down there in time. We'll be back Saturday night, hopefully around 9 p.m. We'll have more details for you soon on that. That same weekend, March 17th, on that Sunday, is our Senior Saints Sunday. All of our students need to plan to attend that and help just serve some of the people who have served our church for so many years. So, if your student can stick around on Sunday afternoon and just help us clean up, to do some dishes, to serve, to make sure all the tables and chairs get put up, that would be great, so we can serve some people who have made a huge impact on our church and have given so freely of themselves for many years. State competition is April 12th and 13th in West Plains, and you need to get your forms to me by March 6th if you're planning on competing. They need to be completely filled out with all of the information on that so I can get them sent off and then get put in the booklet. A little note is that there will be no Friday night service this year in West Plains, so you can take your time getting down there on Friday night and get a hotel room and spend the night. There will be a mandatory meeting on Saturday morning for all competitors, coaches, and parents at 8 a.m. At the church, and more details will come out on that very soon. We'll have some hotel information that will be available hopefully in the next couple of days, and that will be put on the Facebook page that you can find out. A few other days to keep in mind: April 20th is going to be a parents' night out, and so the youth group will be sponsoring that, and so all kindergartners through 6th graders will be able to come, and we're just going to give the parents a night out. And so if you have high schoolers, they'll be supplying the babysitting. If you have kids that fit in that kindergarten to 6th grade, then you can come drop them off, and we're just going to hang out with them on April 20th. And so keep that in mind. Our junior leadership team is putting that event together. And then May 4th, for those that are going on the missions trip, that's our required training day. It'll begin at 10 o'clock and go till about 2, and just going to go through some things that they'll need to know. Well, this month I found an interesting article about something that's going on in our teenagers' lives. Apparently there's a new trend with these teens, and some of them don't even realize that it's occurring. This is known as sleep texting, which you can probably place it together. It's like sleepwalking. And many teens are so connected to their phones that they are sending text messages at night, late at night, that they don't even recognize that they're sending. When they wake up, there's no recollection of the fact that they had sent a text message to someone. As Elizabeth Dowdle, a nursing professor at Pennsylvania's Villanova University, she spoke, and she said the phone will beep, they will answer the text, and they'll either respond in words or gibberish. And the professor warned that these texts can sometimes even be inappropriate. And so when the students wake up, they don't even know that they've been sending text messages until they look at their history and recognize what had been going on. This is just one of those signs about the technology advancement that's going on in the world. Our students many times are so connected to their phones that they don't even recognize now that they're sending text messages. And of course, I don't think text messages are bad. I send them constantly to our teenagers, and they text back and forth to me. That's the way that they communicate, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think it's just something that we need to be aware of, that many times our students are sending so many text messages, they don't even recognize it sometimes. The sleep cycles have even changed for some teenagers. Instead of going about 4 hours, now many of them are waking up every 90 minutes to 2 hours, and they're checking their phones and different things just because things are changing. And so, again, like last month, it's just important, like we talked about, how to have those appropriate boundaries for our teenagers, because sometimes they don't even recognize what's happening. I want to spend the majority of the time on the challenge for this month. Each month, I just want to challenge you guys to do ministry together as a family and to just spend time with the Lord. And I've been reading this book called Student Ministry and the Supremacy of Christ by Richard Ross. And it's really had some interesting things to say that I just want to share with you. As you all know, Brother Ken and I here at Calvary Fellowship, we just want to share that heart with you about how faith begins at home, that Deuteronomy 6 model where God challenged the parents to teach their children His laws and His commands. And here are just a few thoughts that kind of coincide with that. First and foremost, I think it's important for you to recognize that spiritually lethargic parents will almost always produce spiritually lethargic children, which that in turn means that whenever they become parents themselves, they're going to produce spiritually lethargic children as well, because they'll be the spiritually lethargic parents. And so it's very, very important that all of these faith aspects that you want your students to take hold of, it begins with you. If you're not implementing faith into your life, then you can't expect your students to grasp that, because they're watching you every single day. They're looking to see what is consistent in the home and what they're hearing in the Bible. And if you're not implementing even some of the basic things of daily devotions and prayer and all of these different aspects, then most likely your students will never catch on to that. So how do we get there? God's primary plan to get truth into the lives of children and teenagers was not through a youth ministry. It wasn't through the church even, but it was through parents. That was God's design to get His truth out to the world, was for parents to teach their children and to just begin a domino effect. You're the primary disciplers of your students. And here are just a few thoughts for you. One way is I think your students should hear you pray. Many of our students on Sunday and Wednesday are horrified to pray. I'll take prayer requests and I'll say, okay, someone lead us. And there have been times where we sat there for 30 to 45 seconds in complete silence, because I want them to understand that they need to pray. And one of the best ways for them to learn to pray is to hear mom and dad at home kneeling at the feet of Jesus. Now, some other way that I think that it really benefits them is whenever your students will hear you pray for them by name. Maybe this month you just need to focus on gathering around as a family, praying one time a week, and you really just pouring out your heart before the Lord, that your students can hear the way that you pray. It will mean so much to them to hear that mom and dad are actively praying for them. Another thing that can really benefit your students is instilling a heart for the world in them. You all know that Lindsay and I absolutely love missions. We've been so blessed in our life to go on many different missions trips. We love missionaries. We love being able to travel and see all those things. And I love to instill a heart for missions in our students. But what goes further is seeing mom and dad actively engaging in sharing their faith with the world. Now, I don't mean that this summer you need to plan on taking a week-long missions trip to the jungle of Africa and so your students can see you actively engaging in evangelism. But sometimes this is easy as your neighbor. I'm sure that every single person can name at least one person they know who is not a Christian. They don't have faith in Jesus Christ, and they need to hear the message. And maybe it begins in those prayer times as a family where you begin praying for that person's heart. But the biggest thing that I think our students can see is when mom and dad roll up their sleeves, they walk across the street, and your students can hear you sharing your faith with someone else. It will go so far. What about your finances? This is a big one for myself, because I grew up knowing what the word budget meant. We've done the financial peace thing here at church since the beginning of January. My family went through that. I knew who Dave Ramsey was. I went through all of those different aspects. And my parents would share about finances with my brother and I. We knew that mom and dad gave. We knew that they tithed their income to our church. We knew that they gave outside of that to missionaries. And we saw all of those different aspects. And that meant a lot for me. And maybe you just need to share a little bit with your children about how you give to the Lord's work, how you tithe. Maybe they need to see you write the check. Maybe they need to see you put it in the offering plate to know that you are trusting God faithfully and being a great steward of God's money. And we can make a gigantic list, but this last one, I think it's very important. I remember whenever I was growing up that I would walk out of my bedroom and look into my parents' room, and I could see my mom sitting on the side of the bed reading her Bible. And there were many Saturdays where I would walk downstairs and my dad would be sitting on the couch with a bowl of Cheerios with cut-up bananas in it and his Bible open in his lap. And he would be studying God's Word. And there'd be many times that we'd be able to engage together in God's Word, and they would tell me things that they had learned. And I knew that they were digging into God's Word. Maybe you have recently studied something in the Bible. Maybe just in your quiet time, you've read something and God spoke to you so greatly. Maybe you should share that with your students. It will go so far for your students to hear that mom and dad are actively engaging God's Word, and then you take it so much to say, guess how God spoke to me this week? And you just pour into them. That will instill in them a love for God's Word because it's important to you. On a drive somewhere, begin sharing with them what you read. It doesn't really matter where. Now, through all of these, maybe you recognize there's some holes in your life that you need to fill. Maybe you can't talk with your students about some of these things because they're not a part of your life. So maybe that's your challenge. I want to encourage you in these different aspects. Begin placing these into your life. Begin using these things as a challenge to your personal faith, recognizing that your students need you to be doing these things. Not so they grow up to be good moral kids, but so they grow up with a heart for Jesus Christ, that they will be so connected to Him because they saw mom and dad pouring their heart and their life out to who He was. I pray for a spiritual awakening in our church through our parents because that's where it will begin with. I thank you for being awesome families. You guys have some of the greatest kids that I have ever met. But it all begins with you. How's your faith this month? What are you doing to build your relationship with Jesus Christ? And as you build those, your students will catch on to it. Stay warm this weekend, get outside, have some fun in the snow with your kids, and we'll see you Sunday as we come and we worship the King. Have a great week.